Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. So today we are going to continue chapter 2 and we will start then chapter 3. So there is one small topic that is pending in the chapter 2 and then we'll start with the chapter 3, that is the next topic that we want to cover. Okay, just a quick recap what we have seen in the last lecture and what we have discussed till now. So just a minute. We started understanding by the whole journey of these standards, why it is required, where they help us, what is the purpose of these standards. Okay, then we started understanding about planning, all those stuff. We had a brief understanding. We went and understood about the SA 240 for auditors responsibility relating to fraud in a financial statement. Then we went ahead and we discussed about SA 250 considerations of laws and regulations in an audit of financial statement. Again, we were discussing about the responsibilities of the auditor. Then we saw the responsibilities with respect to communication to those charged with governance. We saw responsibilities regarding communicating deficiencies in internal control to those charged with governance. Then we understood the responsibilities in case of a joint audit. Okay, what is the responsibility of the auditor in case of joint audits? So that was also one area that we saw. Now, the next area that we will be seeing is, before I talk about that area, let's take one example and one scenario and then see what should be done and what is the standard says in that particular area. Okay, we'll start with an example today first. Okay, let's say for example, you got audit of XYZ Limited. Okay, you got an audit of XYZ Limited. Now, XYZ Limited was having three different processes, yeah, four different processes. Let's say I'll list down its processes over here so that it's easy for us to discuss. Let's say first is O2C, P2P, R2R, FA, payroll. Okay, then kind of tax. Yeah, tax. Okay, fine. Great. So these are the processes basically for XYZ Limited. Now, payroll has been outsourced to ABC Private Limited, and tax has been outsourced to DFN Associates. Okay, it's a kind of CA firm. Now you have been appointed auditor of XYZ Limited. See, now these are the O2C, P2P, R2R, FA are the areas which are there within the company itself. For those who are not aware, like, what is O2C, what is P2P, that is order to cash, procure to pay, record to report. FA is a fixed asset process. Okay. Now, these are something which are managed in-house. Means these processes are basically being managed in-house within the company itself. Okay. But these processes too, like payroll and tax, they are being managed outside the company. So there is another company which is, providing these kind of services. Okay. So now let's say, for example, in payroll itself, you went, you asked your client, okay, sir, tell me about, the payroll process. What do you do in payroll process? What are the things, that is being done by ABC Private Limited? Why you are outsourcing? What is the process being outsourced? And, you asked a lot of questions, understanding the entity. Okay, kind of. So you came to know this particular thing, that with respect to uh, payroll processing, monthly payroll processing, XYZ Limited shares timesheet to ABC Private Limited, and ABC Private Limited in turn provides payroll sheet to them. Okay. So XYZ Limited just shares the timesheet for the month, and ABC Limited provides the payroll sheet. Now ABC Limited also has the master data. So master data, employee master data is with ABC Private Limited. Okay. So this is the kind of scenario. And when you went and asked, sir, tell me, how do you, check payroll processing sheet? So you went and asked in XYZ company that, okay, so tell me, how do you check the payroll? What do you do in the payroll? So they say, okay, we don't do anything. Everything is done by ABC. We just provide them the timesheet, which is coming from the system. That's it. You said, okay. And you asked like, okay, what ABC does in this scenario once they receive timesheet. So the company is saying that, okay, we don't know. We don't have any idea what ABC does. We just provide them the timesheet and they give us the payroll sheet and we release the payroll based on that. Now, you tell me what you will do in this scenario when management, is relying upon the work which is being performed by ABC Private Limited. So they are not doing anything. XYZ is not doing anything. They are just, providing timesheet to ABC and ABC does everything. How will you audit payroll sheets, payroll cost, payroll expenditure in this scenario? So, how to audit whatever processing is being done at ABC Private Limited? How to audit the processing done outside company, that is ABC Private Limited. Or for a change, let's say for a change, I'll make it that ABC Private Limited is in China. It's not in India. The payroll processing department is in China. ABC Private Limited is in China. Now tell me, how will you audit ABC Private Limited? Come on, guys. How will you audit this particular company which is not there in India, which is in China? And XYZ Limited is Indian company. This is in India. What you will do to audit ABC Private Limited? What you will do to audit ABC Private Limited? on, guys. Come on, come on. Let's say ABC Private Limited is in China. What you will do to audit ABC Private Limited or the processing which is done by the ABC Private Limited? Come on, quickly. Waiting for your answer, guys. Salesh, Viraj. Okay. So if I was on your place, what I would have done is number one, I would have understood that why this particular entity is important for XYZ. Why the processing of this particular entity which is done by ABC Private Limited, processing of ABC Private Limited is important for XYZ Limited, and the reason is payroll. The importance is directly attached to the payroll. So number two, is there any relationship between both? Is ABC Private Limited a subsidiary, or who is the auditor I can approach, or all that stuff I will understand, and by that way I can identify whether ABC Private Limited is a service organization. So if uh, ABC Private Limited is providing services to XYZ Limited for payroll processing and the way they do to others also. Okay. In that case, I will say that it's a service organization. So ABC Private Limited will be a kind of service organization. Okay. Now, what is a service organization? Service organizations are organizations that are kind of providing certain services basically to the main entity or to the entity which is there is a question for the audit. Okay, so kind of service organization is kind of a third party organization that provides services to the user entities. Now there are few terms we need to understand here. Okay, one is a service organization and second is a user entity. I could say entity under audit. Okay. So if a service organization is providing services to a user entity, in that case, how will I audit? How will I, look into the matter? That is something SE 402 guides me. For that, I have SE 402 to guide me on this. So what SE 402 says? SE 402 is audit considerations relating to an entity using a service organization. Okay, using a service organization means I am obtaining a service. XYZ Limited is obtaining a service from another entity, and that another entity is providing some kind of back office service, some processing service, some kind of service to user entity. Now the question comes is that whether all the services are required to be covered. For example, here as I told you that it is a payroll process. I'll change an example. Let's say there is a company ABC Limited. ABC Limited has hired XYZ Private Limited for what? For scanning and filing. Means what is the service here is the service is whatever papers are received by ABC Limited, because ABC Limited is hospital kind of service provider. Okay, so whatever papers are received by ABC Limited, those are passed to XYZ Private Limited for scanning and archiving. Okay, now in this case, this scanning and filing services, they scan the papers, they file it, and keep in go down and archive the papers and everything. Do you think this particular process or this particular service is relevant from my audit point of view? Is this service is required to be audited? Do you think there is this particular area of the service is required to be audited, or something you should focus upon high risk area or low risk area, something like that, scanning and filing? If I ask you how much risk is there in the scanning and filing process, what you will do, what you will say, what will be your answer on that? So to decide whether any area is required to be audited or not, I need to perform risk assessment for that area. What is the risk associated with that area? So what is the risk do you think here? High, medium, low? I'll give you options. This area contains high risk. Second is medium risk. Third is low risk. Fourth is fraud risk. Okay. So you have these four options. You have these four options: high, medium, low. Good, Selex, very good. What option you will select? If I perform a risk assessment for this particular area, what is the risk that I'm going to select for this area? Come on, guys. If I say scanning and filing, if I'm performing risk assessment for scanning and filing services or process, so risk assessment for scanning and filing business process. So what is the risk you are going to assign to scanning and filing business process? Okay, how do we identify, how do we do the risk assessment? We identify what could go wrong, kind of. Okay, we understand what could go wrong. You tell me what could go wrong in this process. What could go wrong in this process? Tell me. In scanning and filing, what is the risk you see? What could go wrong in scanning and filing? Come on, guys. Okay, Mohammed. What risks are there? Like, what are the risks in this particular process? What could go wrong in this? Anyone? What can go wrong in this particular in this particular process? So one, like, papers are not scanned properly or appropriately. Okay. Second risk I could see is what could be the second risk? Sorry. Sorry for that. Archival is not done properly. Okay. These are the two risks I can see. Archival is not done properly or papers are not done scanned properly. And if I combine both of them, if I combine here both of them, the only risk I can identify or risk related to both of the areas I can identify here is record retention risk. That is, the records might not be retained appropriately. If I want to retain, if I need to retain records for 8 years, there could be a scenario I have not retained the records for 8 years. Record retention risk. Okay. But again, the question comes is that how much important, okay, and how, for example, if record retention risk is there, what is the occurrence of this particular risk? How many times this has happened before? Everything, I need to understand what were misses in past. Okay, let's say for example, after scanning, what happens? Okay, where the scan data is stored, then is there any identified uh, issues in scanning process or scanning and filing process? So there are a lot many things, and if I tell you that okay, this is not the first time that is being documents being scanned, the ABC also does, and then XYZ also does. So there are a lot many things we need to understand, and but I trust me, if I see there is only one single risk, record retention risk, I will classify as a low risk. I will classify as a low risk. Reason because this does not impact to my financials. This is not impacting to my financials. Record retention risk is there, I agree, but whether it is impacting my financials, answer is no. So documents and filing and everything is done once the transaction is closed, it is entered into the ERP. Then for archival purpose, the documents are gone and shared with the team. So record retention risk does not impact my financials. Yeah, it is a compliance issue. So this is something compliance related, compliance with laws and regulations. So we have already seen in SA 250, if there is a compliance with laws and regulations, which other laws and regulations which do not have a material impact or impact on the amounts of the financial statement, but they could have impact on the operating of the company. So this is a compliance with respect to the other laws and other laws and regulations. In that case, I could say if this particular process doesn't have any impact on my financials, it might be not necessary for me to test. So in audit, if you are getting all your documents, in audit, if you are getting all your information, means their record retention process is working fine. There is no need to test separately the record retention process. And hence, I might exclude this process also. I might exclude this process, this one. I might scope out this process from testing. If I might scope out this process from testing, or either I might assign very low risk. Now the question comes is that if I'm not placing any, emphasis on the testing of this particular process, if I say this process is not required to be tested, it doesn't matter whether they are doing it from outside or is there any service organization. So for me, I will ignore that particular area. Okay, because that is not relevant for me. Even though there is a service organization, I could say this is SO, this is service organization. This is service organization. Okay, but it doesn't matter because the process which is being performed by the service organization is not in scope for the audit, and hence, and there are lot many similar kind of processes which are there. But again, for example, performance evaluation. So all the data is taken together and shared with the service organization. Service organizations go through that data and then they come back. Okay, you should give this much rating to this person. You should give this much rating to this person. There are lot many learning and development department of the company, the department which prepares the e-learnings and then sends to the employee, checks whether they have completed the e-learning or not. A lot of things are there which are usually not part of the audit. They are usually scoped out from the audit. In that case, it doesn't matter if there is a service organization. So not all the service organizations are required to be audited or required to be considered. And that's why there is a standard which guides us, okay, which service organization, if the company is using a service organization, then which one are required to be considered. Okay. So when I say audit considerations, then relating to an entity, in that case, if that is required to be understood, if that is required to be, tested, then only we will consider that service organization. The first and prime, thing here is I need to understand two things over here. One is this service organization is providing service. So with respect to this, with respect to services of service organization, I need to understand whether the services provided by service organization, I will use SO for service organization. Okay. Whether the services provided by service organizations are relevant to the audit of a user entity. User entity's financial statement. Okay. If yes, then only what I will do is I will understand the services, their controls, and their the process in detail. Okay. So first and prime question that I need to ask is whether the services provided by the service organizations are relevant to the audit of a user entity's financial statement, yes or no. Then only I can go forward. Now the question comes is, how will I identify this? How will I identify whether a service provided by service organizations are relevant to the audit of a user entity's financial statement? How will I identify this? Come on, guys. Simple. Pretty simple. Just now we discussed that to which area it pertains to. So for that, the standard has provided us a guidance or checklist kind of. Okay, you see these areas, and if you come to, if you identify any of the category coming into the picture, then yes, you can see it is relevant. So what is that? So basically, a service organization service are part of user entities information. If the service organization services are part of user entities information system, business processes relevant to financial reporting. Okay. If so, I will say yes to this. When the class of the transaction is in the user entity's operation that are significant to the entity's financial statement. The first one means whatever transactions are being provided are being done in the service organization, okay, are relevant. I'll write it here. Just a minute. Sorry. Oh, sorry, there is some technical issue. Just a minute. Yeah. So I was saying that when the service organization services, okay, the class of transaction basically, the class of transaction, classes of transaction in the user entity, okay, operations that are significant to the user entity's financial statement. Means whatever service organization is doing, whether that is significant to the user entity's financial statement, that is the first criteria that I need to see. The second criteria I need to see over here is that whether, okay, whether the procedures, basically the procedures which are being performed, the procedures which are being performed uh, within, like the user entities transactions or related to the user entity transaction. For example, let's say whatever data is coming from service organization, okay, then what is happening with that data? What is happening with that particular information? Okay, in the IT systems or whether it's a manual system, okay, then how that data is considered, initiated, recorded, processed, corrected, transferred to the general ledger or reported in the financial statement by user entity. So if any of the data that is, impacting these procedures, or being, part of these procedures, then yes, that particular type of transaction will become important. Okay. So the procedures, including the procedures within both IT information and technology manual systems, okay, by which the user entity transactions are initiated, recorded, processed, corrected as necessary, transferred to the general ledger, and reported in the financial statement. Okay, so if these procedures are somehow, within the user entities, information system is there, manual systems are there. If that information is being used over there, then yes, it is an important one. Okay, then the next one is that when the information that is being, generated by the service organization is related to the accounting records, okay, then it is either could be electronic or a manual form, okay, it is supporting information and specific for the specific accounts in the user entity's financial statement, again that are used to initiate, record, and other like correction in correcting the incorrect information. So a lot of things are there in that case, but they are related to the accounting records. If that is the case, then yes, again, that is very important and we will consider that information. And we'll see that, okay, this information is useful to the user entity. Okay. Then you can say how the user entity system captures events and conditions and other transactions that are significant to the financial statement. Means whatever data or whatever activity which is done by the service organization, if that activity somehow affects that how the user entity is capturing the data, in that case, yes, again that will become important part. Means I'm saying that activities which are done by the user organization are impacting that how the user entity is recording that data. So how the user entity information system captures the event, conditions, other transactions that are significant to the financial statement. So these are certain areas I could say, whether the service provided by service organization are relevant to the audit of user entity's financial statement when the following are affected. The following are affected or impacted, kind of, or the following are impacted by service organization's service. So if the service organization service is impacting the classes of transaction, then yes, it is material. If it is impacting the procedures, yes, it is material. If it is impacting the sorry, just a minute. If it is impacting the accounting related records, again I would say yes, it is material because it is impacting the accounting related records. I'll bring it this one. Okay, if it is impacting accounting related records, either in electronic or a manual form, or it is specific accounts, it is impacting the specific accounts. Yes, if specific accounts, then also it's material. Okay, it is impacting how the user entity system captures the information and events. Yes, it becomes material for me. So these are certain criteria which define the materiality for me, that whether the transactions which are or the services performed by given by the service organization is material or not. Okay. Then if it is impacting the financial reporting process, if it is impacting the financial reporting process, in that case, yes, again, that services provided by service organization is important for me. So if a financial reporting process is being impacted, I need to look into that. And the last one is if it is impacting controls around journal entries area. Okay. If it is impacting controls around journal entries area, okay, in that case, again, it will become important for me. So if the service organization services are impacting any of the item, that becomes important to me. And that becomes material that I need to include in my testing. So these are certain criteria available for that. Any doubt till now? So I am saying yes, I need to cover service organization when the following are impacted by service organization services: the classes of transaction, the procedures, okay, within the IT system or manual system, okay, the related accounting records, specific accounts in the user entity's financial statement, and how they are used to initiate, record, and everything, rest of the things with respect to the accounts. How the user entity information systems, user entities information system captures the event. If the services are impacting this, yes. If it is impacting the financial reporting process and how the entity prepares the user's financial statement, yes. Controls surrounding the journal entries, yes. All these are important ones. Okay. Now, one important question that I want to ask from you guys. A kind of example that I want to place before you. Let's say ABC Limited is there. ABC Limited has appointed MNO Bank, appointed or hired MNO banks. So ABC Limited provides list of invoices to be paid. Okay. MNO Bank once receives the list, makes the payment to those vendors, and then returns the data back to ABC Limited, that is, payments made data. That is then, entered into the ABC system. So this is kind of an arrangement which is being, designed by ABC Limited and MNO Bank. Do you think I need to cover MNO Bank as a service organization? So the question comes is whether MNO Bank is service organization. Simple. So we discussed just now a criteria for the service organization. Criteria were that if the service organization services are impacting classes of transaction in user entities operations that are significant to the user entity's financial statement. The first one itself that we discussed. The first one we discuss is that the classes of transaction, if the service organization services impact the classes of transaction in the user entity's operation that are significant to the user entity's financial statement, then yes, that is material for me that I need to cover that service organization. Okay. In this case, the transactions that are, the services being performed by the service organization, that is a MNO bank, okay, is kind of, issuing the payments and that is impacting significant classes that is there. Do you think I should count MNO bank as a service organization? Do you think I should count MNO bank as a service organization? Come on, guys. What do you say? Should I count MNO bank as a service organization or not? Come on, guys, quickly. What do you think? What do you think here? Should I or should I not? So I will not consider MNO bank as a service organization. It is a service organization. Answer is no. A very big no. Reason because for no, is this one. The reason of no is this one. The essay standard itself says that this essay does not apply to service provided by financial institutions that are limited to processing for an entity's account held at the financial institution. Transaction that are specifically authorized by the entity, such as processing of checking account transactions by bank or processing of securities or transaction by broker. Why? Reason because if we consider each and every entity is a service organization, then what will happen is our vendors will become our service organization. We had to somewhere create a distinction between a service organization and a vendor. Okay. So for example, today you are procuring service of services from MNO Bank. Tomorrow you might be procuring travel related service. Even there also travel related for your employees. Somehow it may impact your financial transactions, and somehow it may fall under the definition of a service organization. But that is not a service organization. That is performing some providing you a service. Okay, as a vendor. So there is a distinction between service organization and a vendor that is usually should not be considered. So there are not many vendors which will provide you a service. Whether they are required to be considered as a service organization, we have the criteria, but we need to understand the distinction between a service organization and a typical vendor. So this essay does not apply to services provided by financial institutions. That is for sure. That is a specific exclusion that has been brought into for the financial institution. Otherwise, what will happen is each and every financial institution will become our service organization. Okay. So, in this example with a bank is not our service organization. I could say, the transaction processed by a bank somehow impact my classes of transaction. It's a service organization, but there is a specific exclusion for the financial institution. I'll write over here also. Exception kind of thing it is there. Okay, where the essay does not apply to the service provided by financial institutions. When then they are limited to the processing for an entity's account. Okay, so if they are limited to the entity's account, then yes, it will not be part of your service organization or classify as a service organization. Clear? Any doubt? Any doubt? Okay. Any doubt? No? Okay. Then let's proceed forward. Now, we understood to whom we need to consider a service organization and which are not a service organization. And why this is necessary? Because to understand if we are able to identify correctly a service organization, then only we need to understand, okay, the next step will come into the picture that what information we need to collect, why we are looking for a service organization to identify. If you identify a service organization, then what next? If we identify the service organization, the second part comes is that audit consideration. So once you identify a service organization, now we need to understand what audit considerations we have to, think about. What are the considerations that we need to look into for a service organization? Okay, the name itself suggests audit considerations. So now we need to understand what are those audit considerations over here. So the objective of the auditor over here is that to obtain understanding of the nature and the significance of the service provided by the service organization. Okay, so auditor needs to obtain understanding of the nature and significance of services provided by service organization. And why we need to understand, why we need to obtain the understanding, why we need to understand the nature and significance of the services, so that we can design and perform audit procedures, so that we can design and perform audit procedures, okay, in response to risks within the processes related to service by service organization, service organization. Understand? Now, once we have understood the services that are being provided by the service organization, we will, come to know what are the risks within that process. Once you identify the risk, you need to design and perform audit procedures to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. And why, why we need to design and perform audit procedures? Simple, to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Okay. In order to us for to issue or express an opinion, okay, we need to gather and obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence by designing and performing audit procedures in response to the risk within the processes related to the service organization. And for that, we need to understand or obtain understanding of the nature and significance of the service provided by the service organization. So if you work backwards, like expression of opinion, for that we need to have sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. For that, design and perform audit procedures. Audit procedures include audit procedures on the services provided by service organization. For that, understand what are the services provided by the service organization. So if you understand the line, then you'll understand what are the things that we need to do. Okay. Now, now the question comes is again to one point that we need to obtain understanding. This part, obtain understanding of the nature and significance of the service provided by the service organization. Now the question comes is how? How will you understand? How will you obtain understanding? Okay, how to obtain understanding? Obtaining understanding of service by service organization. Okay. Now, auditor needs to obtain understanding, but how? What we should do to obtain understanding? That is a good question. Or that is something we need to understand. For the purpose of expressing the opinion, we understood. Okay, I need to obtain understand, but how? What practically you have to do for that? Okay, so you tell me how will you obtain understanding? We have already seen this particular topic, how to obtain understanding by various examples that we have discussed till now. Take it filing one, take it, example before filing, that payroll processing. Also, even whether the services are significant or not, we have also there also seen some criteria. So let's say, for example, okay, if the transactions or services provided by the service organization, okay, have a material impact on my financial statement, then I could say, that is important for me and significant for me. And once it is significant, I need to obtain understanding of that particular services, or the services which are impacting my transaction. So simply, what I need to do is, when I say obtaining understanding of service provided by service organization, I need to understand the nature of services that are being provided, okay, by service organization that is there. Along with that, along with that, okay, what I need to understand, the impact of services on user entities internal control. Now, user entity is the entity which is being audited. Okay. So that is a user entity. Now I'm saying, don't only understand the nature of services, understand how the services are impacting the entity's internal control. Number two, understand the materiality, okay, of the transaction processed. Materiality of the transaction processed, or accounts processed, or financial reporting processes. Materiality or financial reporting processes, okay, affected by service organizations services. Means, what is the quantum I'm talking here? Number three, understand the interaction between service organization and user entity. Means, how both are interacting with each other. For example, what data is going from where, and what is happening, with that data, how the data is flowing between both the entities. Understand that thing. Okay. Understand the contractual terms and the relationship between service organization and user entity. Relationship means whether they are related party, whether they are unrelated party, what is the contractual term, okay, who is liable for processing, who's required to check the data sanity, accuracy, or completeness. So whose responsibility is what? That will be covered under the contractual terms. And then you need to understand the relationship between both of the entities in order to get the understanding, clear understanding of that. And by this way, you can obtain an understanding of the user entities, okay, uh, the processes which are being affected by the services of service organization, and how the user entity is basically using the services of service organization. Any doubt? Any doubt? Now, this is something we need to obtain, and we need to obtain the understanding. Okay, we need to obtain this kind of understanding, and from where we will get this information. Who will provide us this information? That is a question. This is, I can say, how the user entity is using services of. This is how. This is to understand how user entity is using these services of service organization. Okay. Now the question comes is, who will provide us this data? Who will provide us, or auditor, this information? Who will provide the auditor this information? My question is, who will provide auditor this information? Okay, what are the contractual terms, how the services are used, the materiality, and all those stuff. From where you will get this information? If you are the auditor, from where you will receive this information? This is how the user entity is using the services, but who will provide you this information? Come on, guys. Who will provide you this information? I'll give you two options. Option number one, that is user entity or service organization. Option number two is service organization. So who will provide you this information? Whether user entity or service organization? Which option you will choose? Okay. Good, Salish. Very good. Now, to bring a twist, this service organization is in China. They are not reachable. And and user entity is not aware of the processing done by service organization, that how they are processing the data. So they just give the data get processed, and user entity receives back this particular data. So let's say, for example, whatever data which has been received back by the user entity does not process anything. If in a flow of transaction, if I explain you again with an example, so I'll give you two types of scenarios. Okay, ideal scenario or the current scenario that is there in the current that we are discussing. So let's say we have a user entity, we have service organization. Ideal scenario is user entity generates the data. So data is generated within the user entity. User entity then shares this data to service organization. Okay. Sharing the data to SO. SO is performing some processes. Okay. Then after performing the process, SO shares back the data after processing. SO is providing information back to user entity. But user entity before processing, there is a controls are in place. You can say this is kind of a control. Or let me remove this one. Let's say this is the control. Okay. This is a basically control environment. So the data goes into this control environment, gets processed, filtered out, checked. So controlling is, that is being done whether the data is complete, accurate or not. And then after the control, the data comes to the user entity for processing. Okay. So after verification, the data or the information is stored in ERP. Understand? This is a usual or ideal way that is there. But what if I say this control environment is missing? This control environment is missing. Okay. If I say this is missing, this is not present, the direct information goes to the user entity. And user entity does not perform any internal, does not have any internal controls on this information. Or user entity does not, check the accuracy, completeness of the data. And they rely upon the controls which are there in the service organization, but they don't have information of that. That happens at times. Okay. So the second scenario, I'll write it here only. This is the first scenario. Second scenario is that control environment is actually missing. Okay. The control environment is actually missing. And data directly flows. Okay. Data directly flows into these entities ERP system. Now, user entity relies upon user entity relies upon controls in service organization. So they do not verify anything. They rely upon the control in service organization. Let's say for completeness, accuracy, and integrity or authenticity of the data. And how? If I give you an example of this also, let's say for payroll processing, the data was shared for 10 employees. 10 employees let's say 10 employees timesheet was shared. Okay. Now, service organization over here has the vendor master, employee master data. So the employee master at the service organization shows, let's say 12 employees. I have provided, the company has provided timesheet for 10. Now, user entity, when I say relies upon the controls on the service organization, means user entity is saying that service organization should check whether the timesheet of all employees has been received. So the completeness check should be done by service organization. User entity is not checking whether the data which is being shared here is complete, is not being verified by the service organization or user entity. This control is placed, or they are relying that okay, you perform service organization, you look into that. I will not look into this control. So whatever data I will throw to you, you see, you process it, and just give me the final output back to me. In that case, there are no controls in the user entity, but the controls are being relied upon the service organization. And what if I say the user entity even doesn't have the information whether such control or the service organization is actually checking whether all the timesheet has been received or not? Means service organization, whether service organization is performing that check or not. I am saying I am user entity. I am giving 10 employees timesheet to that particular service organization. But I don't know whether they are checking this or not, whether they are checking the completeness or not. Or if yes, they are checking the completeness. Let's say, for example, if they are checking the completeness, but are they checking appropriately? How will I come to know all this information? Either service organization or either user entity. If both, let's say, for example, the first responsibility is of service organization. So, first, service of user entity has to provide me the information. If user entity is not able to provide me the information, then I need to seek other options. So, who will provide auditor this information? The first one is user entity. If the user entity or user auditor basically is unable to get the information, okay, if user entity doesn't have, they don't want to give, whatever, in that case, what we can do as a user auditor, what we can do as a user auditor, I can obtain or I can do these things. Either I can, contact service organization and ask him, please provide me the information. Second, I can visit service organization and perform procedures over there. To obtain the information so that whatever necessary information I need. Third, I can use another auditor and ask him, please go and perform the procedures over there. If this is also not possible, then the another last option and last dot is I can obtain type 1 or type 2 report. Understand? I need this information to obtain the understanding of the service organization. Why? Because that is the audit consideration I need to see. I need to understand, obtain understanding. That's the first part. To obtain understanding, I need to have all this information. And if the entity is not able to provide me the information, I need to use the alternate processes that obtaining type 1 and type 2 information. Now the question comes is, second question is, okay, I understood the process, I obtained the information, I did everything. The next part is that I need to design and perform audit procedures. First was obtaining understanding. Now I need to design and perform audit procedures. Okay. Then how can I design and perform audit procedures? What should I do while designing and performing audit procedures? So for that, we need to understand two things. That is, one is what is type 1 and type 2 report, how they can help us in designing and performing audit procedures so that we can obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Okay. Number two, who is issuing us this report? That is also very important. Okay. Now, when I say we will obtain type 1 and type 2 report, we need to understand what is the difference between type 1 and type 2 report and what are these reports, how they can help us. When I say type 1 report, okay, what is the coverage over here? What is covered in type 1 report? Type 1 report usually covers a description prepared by the management of the service organization, okay, regarding the controls that have been placed and designed and implemented in the service organization. So you can say kind of, a description of the controls. Kind of a description of the controls that are being prepared, that are being, there at the service organization. Second is a report by service organization. Type 2 report usually, is a report by service organization, service auditor. It's a report by service organization, service auditor, that the controls which are there as of now, okay, the controls which are there, which are mentioned above, are appropriate or not, or are designed appropriately or not. So they talk about design of that particular controls. Two things. One, the description. Second is the design. That is the coverage of type 1 report. Again, type 1 report covers description prepared by the management of service organization. Okay. Description prepared by the management of service organization. And description regarding what? Description regarding service organization's system, control, okay, that have been designed and implemented at a specified date. So I said description about service organization system and control on a specified date. Date means as on 31st March 2023, as on this particular date. So what is on that particular date? The control and system that the service organization is having. Plus, report by service organization's auditor, providing you reasonable assurance, okay, that systems and controls of the service organization that we were talking about, okay, uh, systems and control of that service organizations are designed in such a way to achieve these specified objectives. Means they are designed appropriately, kind of. Okay, they are designed appropriately. So that is the coverage of type 1 report. Now, if I talk about the coverage of type 2 report, what is the difference in that? Let me show you the difference between both of them. Type 2 report, when I say type 2 report, talks about service organizations, system controls, okay, descriptions, but not only related to a specified date, not only related to the specified date, but that becomes on, basically what you say, throughout the year. So, a description prepared by the management of services of service organizations, okay, their systems, controls, their design and implementation. See, till now we were talking about only design. I'll highlight over here, which are new. The new word, implementation. Okay, we were till now only were talking about design. Okay, now we are talking about implementation also. As at a specified date or throughout a specified period. We were not talking about the period till now. We were talking about only date in type 1 report. Type 2 report, we are talking about specified period also. Again, till now we were talking about only design, but now we are talking about operating effectiveness throughout a specified period. So when you add the operating effectiveness throughout a specified period in the type 1 report, you will get type 2 report. When you will add operating effectiveness in the type 1 report, you will get type 2 report. Are you getting my point? Understand the difference here. The type 1 report and type 2 report. Type 1 report was talking only about, okay, the design and implementation at a specified date. Either they are implemented, they are designed appropriately or not on a specified date. But type 2 report is talking about, whatsoever is there throughout the period. The implementation and, design throughout the period. Now, the second part of the type 2 report talks about a report by service auditor. That was there in type 1 also the report by service auditor providing reasonable assurance. So, description of the service organization system and control, their suitability of design, okay, to achieve control objectives, and operating effectiveness of the controls. That is something new. Operating effectiveness, again, we are talking about. Till now, we were only talking about design. Now we are talking about operating. Second point in the type 2 report is a description of auditor's test on the control and results thereof. Now we are talking about testing. Without testing, you cannot, provide operating effectiveness. So description of auditor's test on the controls and the results. See the difference between both of them. On one side, I'm talking about design. On another side, I'm talking about operating effectiveness. So if you add testing of control, okay, to obtain operating effectiveness in type 1, you will get type 2 report kind of uh, arrangement. In type 1, if you add testing of control to obtain comfort over operating effectiveness of the control, you will get type 2. That is the thing. Type 1 is talking about everything on a specified date, design, implementation. Type 2 is talking about design, implementation plus operating effectiveness throughout the period. So type 1 will talk about, let's say, as on 31st March 2023. But when I said type 2 report, it is talking about from 1st April 2022 to 31st March 2023. That is a change between two reports. One is at a specified date, one is at for a period. If I say this is available on March, was this available on April? Was this available on in month of May, June, July? I don't know. I literally don't know. I only know about March. That's it, 31st March. I cannot comment whether the same was available even on 30th March. No idea. Because type 1 report is on a specified date, one particular day. What is the situation on that particular day? That is a type 1 report kind of. Clear? So based on this, when I say obtain type 1 and type 2 report, so now you understand what is type 1 and type 2 report, how they can provide me the comfort. And for sure, the type 1 report will provide less comfort compared to the type 2 report. Okay. Any doubt till now? Any doubt? Any doubt, guys? No? If no doubts, then let's take a quick 10-minute break. After the break, we'll gather back and continue the session, continue the topic. Okay. Let's take a quick 10-minute break. Hello everyone, welcome back. Let's continue the session. Okay. So we were discussing about type 1, type 2 report. We discussed in detail what is a type 1 and type 2 report. Okay. Now, when I say we can obtain a type 1 and type 2 report, should we obtain the type 1 and type 2 report directly? Like, okay, we got the type 1 report, now that is done. We don't need anything else. Before using the type 1 and type 2 report also, do you think we need to check anything over here? For example, okay, I have obtained in this scenario itself, this one, the service organization gave me type 2 report. Service organization provided me type 2 report. Okay. Now this SO is, let's say for example, in Afghanistan. Okay. This type 2 report is prepared by the management, plus there is a description by the auditor. But in Afghanistan, let's say there is no requirement with respect to following SA or audit. So there is no strict requirement on the auditor. Anyone can be auditor. So let's say the plus auditor who has not followed either SA or ISA. What you will do in that case? Do you think you can directly take the type 2 report also? What do you say? Do you think you can directly take the type 2 report also in that scenario? Come on, guys. Do you think the type 2 report can be relied directly? I would say no. I cannot rely type 2 report directly in this case. If that is the case, I cannot rely. What should I do then? The question comes is, if I cannot rely on the type 2 report directly, what should I do? So, before relying on type 1 and type 2 report, you need to perform these procedures. Number 1, understand service organization's auditors professional competency, like except when he's a CA of ICAI, okay, and its independence requirement. So I will understand service organization's auditor professional competency and its independence from service organization. It should not be the case the auditor should be part of service organization. There is no independence. Okay. An exception is if he is a CA from ICAI. Because in that case, we know there are lot many requirements, so we are fine with that. Exception is CA or member of ICAI. Otherwise, I need to understand. Number 2, I need to understand that advocacy of standards followed by service organizations auditor to issue type 1/type 2 report. What standard he is following? In India, we have a standard on auditing issued by ICAI. What is there in Afghanistan? This standard, whether are they following international standards or they are not following any standards. So that is something we need to understand. And then we need to, if we want to use that type 1 or type 2 report as an audit evidence, okay. So this is something before relying. After relying, if I want to use that as an audit evidence, after relying on the report, if I want to use audit evidence, auditor wants to use that as audit evidence, then I need to understand how much audit evidence is getting, how much comfort I'm getting from that. Okay. The level of comfort. Now, the level of comfort will depend upon the level of comfort or evidence will depend upon the description and design of controls as a service organization. The description and design of controls at service organization. Okay. Then the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence provided by the report for the understanding of user entities, internal control. So it kind of, you can say, information provided by the report, whether complementary controls are there, any complementary controls are there in service organization. For example, if I give you example, completeness of employees timesheet checking in service organization. So this is a complementary control that should have been there in the user entity, but it is there in the service organization. So any complementary controls in the service organization? If yes, if I evaluate all these things, if I evaluate all these things, if I understand, evaluate, check these things, then on the basis of that, I can understand what level of evidence I'm getting. I need to evaluate, understand these areas so that I can, get an, understand like what level of evidence I'm getting. So if I'll evaluate, understand and determine these things, that the description, information, any complementary controls, then on the basis of that, I can identify the level of comfort or evidence that will be, I will be getting from type 1 or type 2 report. And if I am using type 1 and type 2 report as an audit evidence, okay, I will identify the level of comfort and then remember the requirement. What was the requirement is, first I need to obtain understanding of the nature and significance of the service provided by service organization. Second was design and perform audit procedures in response to risk. Again, risk within the process related to the service of service organization. Now I need to design and perform audit procedures, and one such audit procedure is to obtain the evidence from type 1, type 2 report. Based on the type 1, type 2 report. Okay. So what I can do is to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Regarding risk in service by service organization, I can either obtain type 1, type 2 report. As audit evidence. But for that, I need to comply with this particular thing before relying and after relying, both. Okay. Number two, I can perform additional appropriate testing, okay, of controls at service organization if if it is I am allowed, if I am able to perform, then I can use another auditor. Okay, I can use another auditor to perform tests for me. For user auditor. Okay, this can be done. Then this is required to be done, and on the basis of this, I can then conclude whether I am getting sufficient and appropriate audit evidence or no. See, and when I'm using type 1 report, the description will be good. But when I'm using the type 2 report, along with the description, I will be adding the period, description, design of control at the service organization, plus period of implementation, information provided in the report, and the period of information. So for type 2, I will add period. Specifically for the type 2. Any complementary controls, then for what period in type 2. Okay. And at the last, if auditor is unable to obtain any evidence, if not able to obtain appropriate audit evidence, then he should modify the audit report, modify the opinion accordingly. Now, the question comes is, another question that I want to place here is whether work performed by service organization's auditor is equal to or is equal to work performed by another auditor. Means, can I say that whatever work is being performed by service organization's auditor is kind of work performed by another auditor, and I can rely upon the work performed by, so I can rely upon that. So means user organizations or auditor can mention the reliance in audit report. Means, can I say that whatever work has been performed by the service organization's auditor is similar to the work performed by another auditor, and I can mention in my audit report that I have relied upon the work performed by service organization auditor. Do you think that can be done? Can I mention that in my audit report that this work has been performed by service organization auditor and I have relied upon that? Do you think it should be done or it can be done? What do you think, guys? The answer is no. No. You cannot refer service organizations auditors reference should not be there in audit report when there is unmodified opinion. In unmodified opinion, I cannot say that I have relied upon the work of service organizations auditor. No, it will not reduce my responsibility. Any doubt? Any doubt, guys? Till now? Any doubt? No? Okay. So this is all about service organization and what is the audit consideration with respect to the entity using service organization SA 402. This is something your chapter 2. Now what we have learned till now in chapter 1, chapter 2, I have already covered some portion from the chapter 3 itself. Okay. What is your chapter 3? We need to understand, what are the requirements and what is being discussed. So, when I talk about your chapter 3, of your study material, that is audit planning, strategy, and execution. Some portion of it already has been discussed. We have already discussed some portion of this particular area. I'll tell you where. If you see, when we were discussing SA 250, we were talking about planning, performing, reporting. Okay, so we discussed some portion of planning at that particular point in time also. When I was discussing your SA 240, I was also discussing what is required to be done at the planning stage. Okay, so what is required to be done during the planning stage? When I was discussing SA 260, I was also talking about communication regarding your audit plan. I was also talking about how to discuss about audit plan. how to communicate your audit plan. At the time of SA 299, we were discussing about your planning with respect to your joint audit. How to do a planning of a joint audit. Remember principles regarding audit planning, risk assessment, allocation of work in case of a joint audit. So how to do planning in case of a joint audit. Same way, how to develop a joint audit plan. So some portion we have already discussed with respect to planning. Now, we need to understand more in depth what is audit planning basically. Why planning is necessary, what is included in the audit planning. Okay, so something in more detail in audit planning that we need to understand. Some portion we have already understood while understanding the quality control. Okay, with respect to the acceptance and client continuance of client relationship. Okay, some portion will be there with SA 315, 330, contents of the audit plan, that what is required to be included in the audit plan. So when I will explain the content of the audit plan, I'll also take you to the SA 315, 330. Okay, then I will talk about overall audit strategy. What are the overall audit strategies? What is to be considered when we are discussing about overall audit strategy? What is the benefit when we discuss and when we define the audit strategy and why we need to do? Okay, documenting the planning, relationship about the overall audit strategy and audit plan. What is audit program? After plan and strategy, what is audit program? What we need to do in the audit program? See, this is something, with respect to the planning part of the audit. Then comes the audit execution. How to execute the audit? What are the things that we need to do? We need to either rely upon the other auditor. We may need to rely upon the internal work of internal audit. We will go to SA 600, 610, 620 using the work of expert. Okay. That we will understand in there something. With respect to execution part. Okay. Then we will understand, okay, while execution, how important is to to see the planning at the time of execution. How execution and planning, are related. We will see, okay, something on the execution side of accounting estimates. So if I give you a summary as of now, what is included? So our discussion on chapter 3 will be bifurcated in kind of 3 parts. One will be planning, which will include audit plan. Second will include my audit strategy. And third, it will include about my audit program. Second, I will talk about your kind of, you can say, documentation and risk assessment, kind of. A bit of I will cover over here of risk assessment, where I will discuss SA 315 and SA 330. Some portion of SA 315 and 330 over here. Okay. Then I will cover your execution. Execution will cover SA 600, that when we are using work of another auditor, 6110, 620, internal auditor and auditor's expert. Okay. Execution in general, that is 500. How we can get audit evidence and how we can execute 500 plus SA 330. Again, how we can execute the response that we have already drafted during SA 330. Then we can say execution, I would say, with relation to some specific areas. For example, when I say specific areas that relate to SA 540, accounting estimates, how to test accounting estimates, okay, how we can gather more evidence with respect to accounting estimates, that is something we will do. Execution part, something we can discuss in 520, analytical procedures, okay, on some areas, we will discuss that. So that is something, will be discussed in chapter. Okay, we will discuss about, accounting estimate, how accounting estimate, how SA 540 is very important for us when we are gathering audit evidence. We'll talk about analytical procedures, how to use analytical procedures during executions, and how to gather audit evidence. So that will be discussed here. And then that is the content of your chapter 3. Okay. Now, if you say, like a lot of people have a question on this, are, if the question will be from chapter 3 or chapter 4 or chapter 5, can we specifically identify that? See, when a question will come, the chapter is of no relevance. Relevant is the topic and the subject matter of the question. Chapters, but the bifurcation in the chapter is for the easy understanding of the topics. Okay, so when a particular chapter is there, audit planning, strategy, and execution, so all they are clubbed together and the topic is there. Now, let's say for a practical example. Practical example can be on, a particular practical area which can cover multiple topics. Now, that topic can be in a particular chapter, in another particular chapter. Okay. Let's say, for example, SA 315. A question can be based on SA 315. Now, some might ask a question whether it is from chapter 3 or chapter 4. It can be in both. So you need to understand what is the topic. Topics can be interrelated between chapters, and you will see that we have discussed some portion already. We have already discussed a portion earlier. Now we are discussing the rest of the portion. Okay. So when I will discuss chapter 3, I might discuss some glimpse of a particular topic or a particular standard, and we might discuss certain part in some other chapter for your better understanding. Okay. Any doubt till now? Any doubt? Any doubt, guys? Before I proceed to chapter 3, any doubt? No doubts? Okay. Let's start then. Remember in chapter 2, I discussed about this particular overall approach for the audit. When I was discussing chapter 2, I discussed the overall approach. Remember, plan the audit, start the audit, and reporting part. Report the audit. Remember, we discussed this approach. So, when I say I'm commencing a particular audit, what are the things I need to understand? Is very, the main objective of the audit. Before starting the audit, I need to understand the overall objective of the audit. And we have already discussed what is the overall objective. Overall objective is to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence in order us to provide a reasonable assurance that the financial statement are free from material misstatement or material respect are in compliance with the applicable financial reporting framework. That's the expression of opinion. We express an opinion. That is the overall objective. Okay. And when I say overall objective, this can be achieved if I plan and perform the audit as per essay. Because I told you that, essay is a guiding path for us that guides what is required to be done, what is not, what is should be required to be done, and how. Okay. So that's why it becomes very important and guiding path kind of, following essay. And it's mandatory also. So kind of, you can say a guiding path. Now question comes is, okay, how and to what extent we need to plan for an audit. Okay. And whether the planning is required to be done at a particular point in time, or it is a, when we need to do the planning. Okay. So that is a question that might come into your mind. Just let me create a light here. Okay. The first question that might come in your mind is, okay, we are talking about planning. How much planning is required to be done? So when I say how much planning, in other terms, I call it nature and extent of the planning. Nature and extent of the planning. So kind of how much planning is required to be done? To what level? So you guys tell me how much planning is required to be done. Can you tell me some factors which, you know, helps us to decide how much planning is required to be done? On what things the detailed level of planning depends upon? How much detailed planning is required? What are those factors? So, in other words, you need to tell me factors that can impact nature and extent of planning required. Okay, kind of a question. Factors that can impact the nature and extent of the planning required. What are these factors? Come on, guys. What are these factors which you think can impact the nature and extent of the planning? What are these factors? Anyone? How much planning is required to be done in how much detail? What are those factors which can impact this area? Come on, guys. If I ask you, what is the factors that can impact the nature and extent of planning required? Okay. In other words, I'll place another example in front of you. Let's say there is an entity. There are two entities. Okay. Entity 1 and entity 2. Entity 1, industry, and entity 2. Industry, let's say oil and gas. Entity 2, it's a wholesale trading. Okay. Type of entity. It's a listed entity. It's a private limited. Then turnover. 2000 CR. There it is 50 CR. Okay. Then debt. Let's say 1000 CR. And here, let's say 25 lakhs. Small company. Okay. Then another example, divisions. So there are 4 divisions in that company. There is only one single division. Branch. Let's say there are 16 branches across the world. There is only 2 branch. ERP. There are 10 different systems and ERPs. There is only 2 ERPs or tools. Now, this is some information given about 2 entities. Entity 1 and entity 2. This is entity 1 and this is entity 2. Okay. Now, you tell me, in both of the cases, do you think you require the same amount of planning? Will these both entities require the same amount of planning? Whether these 2 entities will require same nature and extent of planning? Yes or no? Whether these 2 entities will require the same nature and extent of planning? Yes, no. Simple. The answer to this question will give you the factors also. Trust me. The answer to this question will give you the factors also. Come on, guys. Come on quickly, I'm waiting for your answer. Come on, guys. What do you think? Whether the 2 entities will require the same amount of nature, extent of planning? The answer is no. Why? Reason because if I say there's a difference in the industry, size is different, divisions are different, okay, systems are different. So I could say type of entity, size of entity, circumstances, all the 3 are different. And these are the factors that I'm looking also. So these are the factors: size and complexity, past experience, expertise, and change in the circumstances. So these are some factors which impact the nature and extent of my planning. That is size, complexity. Okay, you can say past expertise also. If I'm expert in oil and gas or not, or this is the first time for me, or experience. Experience gives you a learning curve kind of circumstances, okay, of the entity and all those areas, other factors. So these are some factors that impact the planning. And planning is a continuous process. So this is continuous process that will not stop with the stop of it's not a kind of phase thing that I need to stop the planning once I enter into execution phase. Okay. So that is about something I wanted to discuss about planning, how the nature and extent of the planning is affected. Okay. Now overall audit strategy. When I talk about overall planning, planning includes establishing an overall audit strategy. Now, when I talk about establishing overall audit strategy is kind of a document. This provides the scope, timing, and direction of the audit. Okay, and that guides the detailed audit plan, development of audit plan. So from strategy, you develop audit plan. So first comes overall audit strategy, which gives you detailed audit plan. Now, overall audit strategy is kind of, basically provides an overall aspects of the type of audit. Okay. Reporting objectives, what to report, how to report, when to report. Okay. How much team and resources are required. Then client's acceptance and continuance activities result, independence and ethical requirements evaluation. Okay, and then nature, timing, and extent of resource required. Okay, nature, timing, and extent of resource required. So these are certain things that are part of your what do you say, overall audit strategy. And this helps me to prepare detailed audit plan. Any doubts? Any doubt? Okay. Now, basically, why we establish overall audit strategy is because I want to, have a background and understanding of the overall, that where I want to go. What is the direction where I want to go? Allocation of quantity and resources, management of resources, and all that stuff. That helps me to understand, okay, what I am, what is expected from me to cover in an audit, type of audit, considering like what type of engagement it is, kind of, what is the team resources I have, how I need to plan. Based on this, I plan this. So how much resource I have, how much time I have, how to plan, whether I can, involve this person or not, whether I can involve this person or not, what is the nature, time, and extent of resource I need further, whether I need expert or not. So everything will be decided on the basis of overall audit strategy. Okay. What is the timetable that I need to do, communications, everything. So these are certain factors that are, that helps me to decide the detailed audit plan. Okay. Based on this, I decide my audit plan. What communications are required, nature, time, and extent of the communications with those charged with governance, management with meetings, at what frequency I need meetings with management, when management is planning to issue their financial results, what is the procedure and what type of communication I need to do, nature, timing, and extent of the audit evidence I need to gather, everything. So once I have overall audit strategy, I decide create a detailed audit plan on the basis of that, and then I document everything: overall audit strategy, overall audit plan, and significant changes which are there in the audit strategy and audit plan. So I document this basically whole thing. And when I say I document, I have to comply with SA with respect to the documentation, that is SA 230 audit documentation. When I say SA 230 audit documentation, that audit documentation, what it says about the documentation, how you need to document the things. Okay. SA 230 provides that at each and every phase of the audit, you need to document things. Be it, planning phase, when I talk about, preparing audit plan, when it is deciding overall audit strategy. Okay. When I talk about quality control, okay, details regarding quality control, who is assigned which kind of work. Okay. When I talk about understanding laws and regulations, each and every detail is required to be documented as per the SA 230. Like whatever we are doing, it's required to be documented. Okay. Now, when I say documentation, documentation means that in simple words, if I explain you the documentation, that means that when the documentation is sufficient to provide understanding to an experienced auditor having no connection with audit. Okay. To understand the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures planned and performed, results obtained, okay, or sufficient and appropriate audit evidence obtained, significant matters during audit. Okay. if when the documentation is sufficient to provide understanding, and which understanding? Understanding of nature, timing, and extent of audit procedure, results, significant matters to the auditor who is having no connection with the audit, means that documentation is sufficient and appropriate. Means that documentation is appropriate and sufficient. Okay. So documentation should be in such a way that a person who is not related to audit can understand the audit in detail. If that is a scenario, then you have appropriate documentation, sufficient documentation. In exceptional situations also, like, when there is a departure from a relevant requirement, such departures are required to be documented. So documentation is very, very important. Okay. Any doubt till now? Just understanding, with the understanding of overall, planning, overall audit strategy, detailed audit plan, how it is important, why it is important. Any doubt till now? Any doubt? So it is very important for us to understand what is the audit plan, what is the importance of audit plan. Any doubt, guys? No doubts? Sorry. No doubts? Okay. If no further doubts, let's understand further onto this area. Now, when we are considering, detailed audit plan, what is required to be documented in detailed audit plan? If I tell you, detailed audit plan contains a lot of things, like what is the applicable financial reporting framework? Okay, reporting requirements in detail. So this reporting objectives becomes reporting requirement in detail. Then you have a kind of number of locations to be covered. Then you have an understanding of the entity. Then you have to what extent you will be relying upon the component auditors, to what extent you will use the information and evidence provided by the service organization that we just now saw in SA 402. How much we will rely upon the evidence obtained from previous year audits. How much we will rely upon the automated controls or IT systems. Okay. What is the reporting deadline? How many times we have to meet with the management regarding the audit work? The type and timing of the report to be issued during the audit and at the conclusion of the audit. Discussion with the management regarding communication of the status. Okay. Communication with other auditors, another auditors. Okay. Information that is required to be obtained from another auditor and information that is required to be provided to another auditor that we will see in SA 600. Okay. Whether there are any expected communications with third parties like confirmations, contractual and everything. So we need to understand that that is required to be shared. Because let's say, for example, confirmations, sending the confirmation, getting the confirmations response, and then testing will take some time. So I need to incorporate that time also. Determination of materiality, what is the benchmark for the materiality, preliminary identification of the areas of high risk areas, okay, fraud risk areas, okay, what was the fraud, if any fraud has been identified the management, then how many team members we required on which area. So let's say 3 on fixed asset, 2 on O2C, 1 on P2P, like how many team members we required, discussions of the matters, of significant matters with the management and those are with governance and within the team member itself. If there is a joint auditor, then what areas we will be bifurcated and in the joint audit itself. So, for example, when we saw joint audit, development of the audit plan, meeting with the joint auditors, having areas allocated, okay, having then deciding what is the resource and planning required for the areas allocated to us. Then we will go and we will see that, okay, what is the resource and, time required for the common areas in the case of joint audit. Previously identified observations in case of, recurring audit. If this is the second time audit, then what was the previous observation identified by us? If this is the first time audit, then what was the audit report issued by the previous year auditor? Volume of the transactions. Now, let's say, for example, volume of transaction is very important. Let's say an entity, okay, kind of Amazon, online service provider, your aggregator, or e-shop, e-commerce website. They might be selling a lot of small value items and they have a huge number of transactions. But when I talk about a real estate company, their single transaction might be kind of 2 CR, 3 CR house compared to the, let's say, for example, a real estate company doing 100 transactions, of each transaction of 2 CR will take them to the turnover of 200 CR. E-commerce company doing transaction of rupees, minimum average transaction or average transaction of 500. Now, if I say that if they want to have a turnover of 200 CR, okay, they need to have a turnover of 200 CR. Then how many transactions they have to do? 40,000 transactions compared to the 100 transactions by the real estate company. See the difference. 40,000 transactions for e-commerce company gives 200 CR turnover. 100 transactions for real estate company gives 200 CR turnover. So along with the amount, the volume is very important. Importance of the internal control in both of the organizations, whether there is any internal controls designed, implemented, type of the industry, okay. Then selection of the team member, budgeting. Budgeting, why? Reason because how much team we can allocate, then whether we can hire auditors expert or not for the specific areas. All these things are documented in your detailed audit plan. Now, the audit strategy is prepared before the audit plan so that the audit plan can be prepared in more detail in line with the overall audit strategy. So first the audit strategy is there, which is prepared in much detail. Then the audit plan is prepared. Audit strategy is prepared on the overall level. Then the detailed overall, audit plan is prepared. Now the audit strategy kinds of, provides guidelines for developing the audit plan. Okay. Audit strategy will say this type of reporting. And this is the final deadline. We need to, complete the reporting by this date. That is the overall strategy that we need to achieve this target. But how to achieve, we need to break down in, milestones, in small milestone in goals. And then that small milestone goals documented in one place, that is a detailed plan. So that is how the audit plan and audit strategy are linked, and are, audit plan is dependent upon the audit strategy. On the basis of detailed audit plan, we prepare a audit program. Now, we need to understand what is audit program. We understood what is audit, overall audit strategy, what is detailed audit plan. Okay, now we need to understand what is audit program. Because all these three things are very important to understand. Now, when I say audit program, it is nothing but it contains four type of details. One, let's say for example, name of resource, process / sub process, okay, risk, control, and substantive testing, substantive procedures. So if I say, let's say for example, name of resource Mr. X, he's a manager, or let's say for example, audit executive. Okay, I have allocated to him, let's say for example, I have allocated to him, let's say for example, P2P, procurement or purchasing. Okay, I allocated him the purchasing. Now, he will look after purchasing. Is a process. In purchasing, he will look after invoicing. Let's say the risk is unauthorized invoices are processed. Means invoices are processed without authorization or inaccurately. Okay, inaccurate processing of invoice. So these are the two risks that has been identified in purchasing. Hypothetical example. So there is a control kind of approval before processing and maker checker control. Okay, there are two controls. So we had a risk, we had a maker checker control. Okay, and then substantive procedure that will be performed. What will be the procedure performed for this? Sample testing kind of, let's say for example, sample testing, 25 samples. Or hypothetical example, for this inaccurate invoice processing, we will again perform sample testing. Now understand what I have prepared over here. I have prepared a document which basically, contains details like what is the risk, what is the process, what are the controls, okay, and what is the substantive procedure that I will be performing. So I have prepared a document which will contain these all information. This is nothing but an audit plan where I map the resource with the risk and process along with what is required to be performed. So when I say audit plan is nothing but audit program is nothing but a document prepared to allocate the work to the team members, which include the list of audit procedures and instructions to be followed by the member, along with the duration for the completion and audit task. Okay. It is very important to formulate an audit program, because by this way, everyone will have a clarity that what is required to be done, what is required, when is required to be done, how it is required to be done, and what is the overall, outcome that is being expected here. Based on all these things, audit program is prepared. Now, while formulating the audit program, a lot of things, are considered. Okay. Audit program depends upon your audit plan, detailed audit plan. The way you have designed your detailed audit plan, on the basis of that, your audit program will depend. Clear? With respect to audit program, any doubt with respect to your audit program? Any doubt, guys? Okay. If no doubts, then see, once we have audit program prepared, okay, then in that case, it is very important for us to understand, what is allocated to whom, and there are lot many factors that is, plays an important role while preparing the detailed audit program. In order to prepare a detailed audit program, you need to start with the broad outline of the audit program. Okay, what is the how the areas, broad areas. Then you need to consider the internal and accounting policies that has been reviewed, and then you need to go into details. Okay, so based on your experience, based on the detailed process that you understood till date of the entity, on that you need to evolve your audit program. So as I said, planning is a continuous process. Same way, evaluation of the audit program is also a continuous process. Clear? Any doubt? So overall audit strategy, detailed audit plan, okay, and detailed audit program together helps you in your audit plan. That is the first stage of your audit planning. Here you decide on what basis you need to allocate your resources. For example, if I want to appoint an expert, then where I will appoint the expert, on which area. Let's say instead of mixer X, I will have a name of expert. Okay, by what is the role of expert, how much reliance I'll place by the details given by the expert. All that stuff will be there. So based on this, I will understand what is required to be done, when it is required to be done, how it is required to be done, and by which team member it is required to be done. The second part of the overall audit that we have seen is an execution. We will see the execution in next lecture in detail. Okay. And some of the execution part we will see in chapter 4 and chapter 5, audit evidence. Okay. Then we have the part where we need to, also think about testing of internal controls. Now, that is usually before execution. So let me bring it this down, execution. So before this, I need to plan for risk assessment and evaluation of internal controls. Again, this also plays an important role in your audit program. So if I identify this risk, how can I say this is a high risk, medium, or low? I need to do some assessment to say that whether it's a high risk, medium risk, or low risk. Let's say, for example, if I say medium risk, by control, what evidence is being provided by the control? How much comfort I'm getting from this control? For that, I need to evaluate the control. And based on this evaluation, my substantive procedure will be defined. That okay, how much substantive I need to perform. Okay. So risk assessment, control evaluation will give you the idea about the detailed substantive procedure you need to perform on a particular area. So based on risk assessment and evaluation of the control, you can decide what execution you have to do. Risk assessment and evaluation of the control, something we will see in the chapter 4. Execution, again, somewhere we will see in chapter 5. Plus in chapter 3 also. And then post this, it comes with the reporting, concluding and reporting, for which we will see when we will review chapter 6 plus chapter 7. Any doubt? Any doubt, guys? Now for the next lecture, what you need to do. See, at the end of every lecture, what I suggest is revise. So first of all, make sure that you revise on a timely manner. Otherwise, this is of no use, whatever we are, discussing or writing or, solving the questions here. Revise after the lecture. Make sure you revise after the lecture. That is very, very important for you guys. Whatever I have discussed now, whether it's chapter 3, whether it's, what you say, as chapter 2, whichever essay it is. Let's say, for example, it is essay 402. Then what is we have discussed, then how it is important for from the topic point of view. You need to revise it after the lecture itself. I will be uploading these notes immediately after the lecture. This chapter 2 notes will be available. Okay, so you can go and you can download the chapter 2 notes easily from there. Okay, and then based on that, prepare your notes if you want. Prepare your own notes if you want, or you can use these notes. Okay, and based on that, please revise, because without revision it will be a waste of whatever you are doing and learning over here. Timely revision will help you to remember the topic. Okay, and trust me, this is not a hard subject. It's a very scoring subject. Very scoring subject. So if you plan it like we have to do planning in the audit, if you plan it appropriately, the studies, the revision, the practice, you can easily score good marks in this subject also. The way planning in audit required, same way planning here is also required. Okay. So guys, please revise, please practice and bring your doubts. That is very important. Your doubts are very, very important to us. Also, chapter 2 notes have been uploaded. They are available now. You can download it. Okay. And you can, just go through the notes, and if any doubts, please bring your doubt in the next lecture. Okay. If no further doubt, guys, then we keep it till here in today's lecture. In next lecture, we will be discussing two major topics. Number one, topic with respect to using the work of another auditor, internal auditor, and if I'll try to cover the auditor's expert also. Okay. So these three or two topics we will discuss in the next lecture. But for that, I want you guys to revise or I want you guys to read in advance those topics. Read in advance. SA 600 series. That will be the topic of discussion of our next lecture. Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you for your time. I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Yes.